Hello there everyone and welcome to my stream. As usual, I'm Bachocolio and today I will start to paint these two Blood Bowl miniatures for the Norse team that I'm going to be taking on the World Cup. How is everybody doing? Let's just give a few moments for everyone to come around and I will start painting. Fortunately, there seems to be a bit of flickering. Alright, that fixed it. Sorry about that, I'm still playing around with the settings for the cam. When priming these two guys white, I really didn't consider the fact that it will play horribly with the video capture. So hopefully you will be able to see a bit more of the miniatures once I actually put some paint on them. But we'll see. I'm also trying out a few new things, as you may have noticed. I'm using a new mat for the background. It's actually just an old shirt I have spread out. It is giving me some issues though, so I'm gonna have to tweak it later. So funny thing happened yesterday. As I was trying to get these guys ready, get them primed, get them on the painting stands, I was playing around with the airbrush, and wouldn't you know it, that was its last breath of life. The compressor and the airbrush just died. So I actually had to prime them using a can, an aerosol can of primer. It's the same one that I was using anyway. But yeah, I was planning to release the post yesterday evening. Obviously that didn't happen. So challenges all around. So this is the next to last batch of Norse that I will be painting. There are two more that I have to prepare to finish up the build for my team, and then I will vary up the content a little bit with something else. I'll see whether it will be the Necromunda, Goliath gang, if I'll be able to get a few models primed to start painting them, or if I'll switch to a different team. I have a full Bretonian team already primed and based and just ready to receive a coat of paint. But this is something that we'll get to talk about once I get these and a couple more guys ready. Actually, the last two will be ladies, I believe. So in overall, what I will be doing today is just lay down some base colors. I'm gonna start with the flesh tones, since I like painting from the inside out, and the flesh is predominant in these models, although as I mentioned you probably can't see anything. I'll just lay down the flesh, maybe paint the cloth, maybe the blues, see how much time we have and how quickly I progress through the painting, since this will be the first time I am trying to paint from scratch. As you may check in the previous streams, I finished up the last batch, but they were essentially ready. They just needed a few highlights here and there and the basing. So this is where the true challenge in fighting with the cameras and the setup begin. Hopefully I won't have as many problems as I did the first time around. I have the camera fairly figured out this time around. I have my little cheat blank of cardboard here to help me remember where the center of my image is, so that I don't wander off. You can see just the corner of my wet palette over here. I thought that might be interesting for some of you guys. It is a bit out of focus, but it's either the palette or the minis, since at this time I don't have a third camera to focus on the paint on the palette exclusively. I might also need to put another layer of light diffusion on my main light, since it's casting some pretty harsh reflections on the minis, even though the primer is matte. It doesn't play well with the white. So let's begin. For today, I'll be using the Army Painter Regiment sized brush from the Wargamer series, since I will be applying loads of paint and I want a brush that can hold up a decent amount of moisture and paint to give me lots and lots of working time before I need to go back to the palette or rinse off whatever amount of paint I have left before it drying off on the tip. And for the base, I will just be using water to dilute the paint. Always give your acrylics a good shake before you start working to give a chance for the medium and the pigment to remix in case they have separated. I'll lay down a decent amount of paint. The wet palette should keep it from drying out. Now we'll just get a bunch of water on the brush and take a certain part of the whole thing. And we'll start with this here dude. Now I usually start painting bottom to top just to keep consistency. Let me know if I ran out of frame or I managed to lose focus on the miniature. I'm not going overly thick with the coat, so there will be some translucency. We will be able to see the undercoat after this first step before we go in and apply the second one. Keeping the rule of thumb that 2 thin coats are always better than 1 thick one, as Duncan from Warhammer TV always preaches. And since these are not the new range of contrast paints, I will be sticking to his old teachings. I'm just looking to see a consistency of paint that will not leave any brush strokes. And just being careful to cover up all of the surface. Trying to be as tidy as possible, just as a personal exercise. Not mandatory at this step. To be perfectly neat. I just like to strive for it anyway, since the less I go out of the lines, the less I will have to touch up afterward. Additionally, this is where painting from the inside toward the outside comes into play, since the next colors will go over the rims where I may spill out into. This is also the first time I am using white primer. I usually use a light gray one. But I decided that it's time to just go pure white, because why not? And then I turned on the camera, and the answer to that question made itself pretty apparent, unfortunately. So this was the first layer, and now I will start applying the second one. As you can see, the second coat smooths out any imperfections from the first one, giving us a nice color to work with. From what I see, I will have to come in with a third coat as well. That's not a big problem. My first coat may have been tiniest bit too thick. I'll just make sure to use more water and things should be fine. Yeah, now this is too runny. Okay, we just take out a bit of the moisture. Brush, wipe it in a towel or something, and come back in. I'm just going real thin right now, essentially just killing time until the layers on the other leg have dried up so I can reapply the paint. I think here I can reapply it with a fair amount of certainty that I won't move any underlying layers of paint. But up here I was right. You may have also noticed that I have made a bit of an error while assembling the model, as I decided to put the arms straight away instead of leaving them out as a sub-assembly. This is going to give me quite a few headaches when I reach the point where I have to paint underneath the arms. For now, however, it is fine. I have made this mistake before and I've managed to work around it. Although it would be good if I were to finally remember to control my enthusiasm and just build in some assemblies. Make my life so much easier than I do. Okay, my color is going down fairly well. Again, I am being a bit too careful with the thickness of the paint, but I prefer it this way over slapping on far too concentrated paint overzealously and then regretting the outcome. Easier to put more than it is to take away, so this is essentially my driving motto. Especially when applying base coats, since they are the foundation of the color that the model will have, or the section of the model, and it is imperative that it has a smooth surface and that it covers well all around, because that will help me when I start building up the highlights. So going back to the airbrush thing, while I was pretty salty for it breaking down, truth of the matter is that I have taken what I can out of the thing. It was a cheapo airbrush and compressor from Little. I don't know if you have that chain where you're from, but they every now and again come up with these niche DIY tools. And they had this compressor that came with an airbrush. It was a single action airbrush and multiple colors, multiple bottles of colors to go along. And it was decent for what it was. I honestly can't really complain. True, it didn't have a pressure regulator, it didn't have a moisture trap, although admittedly you can add one later. But the biggest problem that it had was the lack of a air tank. Meaning the second that the level of pressure in the compressor went down, it started working. And it wasn't very powerful. So as a result, you could barely ever, if at all, keep a steady stream of air going as it started to vary its pressure and the strength of the airflow, which meant that I could only paint or prime or whatever purpose I would use it for in short spurts. Which naturally limited its usefulness significantly to the point where it was just way too much of a hassle to use. I was using it for priming and priming only. Oops. And even in that capacity, it just wasn't the ideal tool for the purposes that I was using it for. You could use it, you could make it work, but it was just way too much of a hassle. And ultimately, it breaking down finally put the whole idea of me using an airbrush for the moment to rest. I did get a chance to play around with it, I did get a chance to check out what it is to use an airbrush. I have now some practical idea. And to tell you the truth, it's not quite my thing, I don't think. Since a big part of this hobby for me is the serenity that it brings me. And having a compressor being noisy all around while I do any painting, having to frantically run around and clean it completely before it dries off, before the paint in the airbrush dries off. It's just creating stress that I just don't need in my hobby. So for the time being, I'm not going to invest in a new airbrush or a new compressor or any such type of tool. I just got a aerosol can of primer, and it was nice to remember that something that I was doing for an hour about with lots of noise could be done in approximately 5 minutes with the aerosol can. Two very, very, very similar results. Granted, it's not as smooth, but really hard to tell. And all in all, this is just a layer of a paint adhesive so that the acrylic paint would better grip onto the model, so it's no big deal how you apply it as long as you don't create too much texture on the model itself. And we may have hit a small snag in that the inner thigh of this leg is giving me some trouble to catch paint. So we need to go back again. Probably going to be okay. If you see any translucency from the white primer coming through, I am actually going to keep it as is, and I'm going to use that translucency to guide my highlights a bit later. I'm trying to get it as subtle as possible, not to protrude too much through the main color. Just enough to give me a hint, as in place your highlight here, here, and so on. I will be emulating a zenithal highlight, so the source of light will be coming from above, probably at a slight angle, and all around in this section, so that I don't have to focus on too harsh separation between shadows and light, and at the same time I will be able to give emphasis and increase the highlight as I go upward the body. So the brightest highlights will be on his face, shoulders, and maybe the top of his back, which is obscured by the hair. So the shoulder and probably the face and the knuckles over here, the fingers, will receive the brightest highlights. Naturally, this isn't something that I thought about. This is something I saw on other streams, and ever since I started applying this, I noticed that, well, yep, there is more than something to this. Give my brush a good rinse. Get the tiniest bit of water. Hello, Rubber Rimbo. Thank you for joining us. How are you today? How are you doing on this fine Monday evening? Another thing that I like to do when painting, especially on the base colors, is to section off parts of what I'm painting, just so that I have a visual separation of segments that should have wet paint and such that should have dry paint. So I can work on the dry places. You're doing okay, that's good to know. Are you getting a lot of precipitation? Is there a lot of rain where you are? 'Cause here it is hell. Started raining somewhere about noonish. Hasn't stopped ever since. Well, enjoy the heat and the sun. I certainly do. Did you just join or were you lurking about for a while? Just so that I would know whether or not to start repeating any of the things I've been talking about up until now. Oh, alright, alright. Damn, so now I'll have to think of new stuff. Talk about. It's fine, it's fine. Hey, Tanif, how are you? Yeah, I saw your comment on YouTube. That was very kind of you. Thank you very much for leaving it there. For my Blood Bowl game on Friday. That was a very unexpected win, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, okie dokie. We'll be right here. Well, Rainbow says it's just 2 clicks to clear out the recycling bin. Yeah, yeah. I must be more refreshed today than I usually am because I did catch on to that before the punchline. So yeah, just applying more and more layers upon layers of the same coat until we reach the desired level of opacity. So I am a bit over spec for streaming requirements. Essentially, what the most important thing that you need is upload speed. You can go into speed.net and you can check your upload speed, and if it is above 3 megabytes per second, or megabits, not really sure, then you can technically stream. Yeah, that is the most important thing. Beyond that, if you want to be streaming just recording video like I am right now, it shouldn't be any additional, it shouldn't be particularly resource intensive on your machine. And if you, for instance, want to stream your Blood Bowl games, you just need to run your Blood Bowl game. The recording software takes up about 10-ish% of your overall resource. And then again, you can also fiddle around with the quality of the output. So essentially, you can stream fairly decently with lower end tech. But again, as long as you have more than 3 megabytes per second on the upload, you should be fine. You should be fine to start. Now, whether or not it will be in the sky with diamonds level quality is a different topic, but I am not aware how resource intensive Age of Empires 2 is, so I can't really say if this is a requirement. But it does also depend what you have running along with the game. So I currently only have OBS and I have the music app running, nothing else. If you have any additional fancy overlays that are generated from separate applications or services, that may create additional an additional need for resource. And can you run Age of Empires 2 on your computer to make a comparison? I mean, if you're referring to the remastered version, of course, not the ancient one from Days Gone. Well, then you should have enough. Right, right. Well, in that case, it may be necessary. I don't know. I don't think that I need a separate PC, at least for now, for purposes of streaming, because I'm just not running that many things. This will, of course, be put to the test as I turn on the other game that I'm gonna try and stream, since it is pretty resource intensive and it was giving me some lag and some frame rate skips and drops, even without recording. So I'm gonna have to play around with that to see if I can get it to a playable state on stream. But yeah, overall, it turns out it doesn't take too much to actually initiate the stream, and you can make it work with relatively relatively little in terms of resource and performance power. Right. Well, upgrading an old PC is always risky in that you are limited in terms of upgrades to what your motherboard can handle. And if the PC is old, that makes the motherboard old. And if the motherboard is old, then that means that you probably won't be able to put into it no, no worries for asking. I have been playing around with this for a while now, so I'm always glad to give any information. Really not an issue of any kind. But yeah, and then you reach the point where if you're trying to upgrade it, the components that the motherboard can actually handle are no longer in stores. I personally have had this situation and it was a bit embarrassing. Yeah. Well, the generations of hardware technology run pretty fast, so you never know. Also, I do apologize for the quality of the stream today. I really did not expect the white primer to hate the camera so much and make the minis virtually invisible. Yeah, Blood Bowl 3 will be coming out far into the future if you ask me. Considering that they hid away their initial thoughts, their initial uh, release. So I'm not holding my breath for it, so to say. So you have more than enough time to think about a decent machine with a moderate and manageable budget. So I'm just gonna give it a couple minutes to dry, and I will go over the section another time. Put one more coat on, especially on the inner parts. And I'll move on to another section of the body. By the way, did you see the thread on Rebel for how the Challengers Cup will roll out? What I got, just play all good. Right, well. Oh yeah, Heroes 3 for the win. Just yesterday, no, on Friday, I met with some friends and they told me that they still get together for some Heroes 3 hot seat every now and again in between the drinks. So yeah, the tradition is still very much alive and I'm very happy for this. Those are always fun times. Yeah, it's the easiest to manage, for sure. Like the fifth one comes close, since it's the closest to 3 in terms of mechanics, and it's got a semi-decent graphical overhaul, but something is missing in terms of the charm that the third one had. Did they actually make a useful... I haven't played anything post 4. Well, yeah. I gave 5 a shot and also 6. 6 is also interesting, but it's a lot sped up and dumbed down in a lot of ways. It's still interesting, but it's far from the strategic depth that the third one had. Yeah, it's only the Restoration of Arathia that they remastered. Yeah, is Shadow of Death in there, or is it just because I have the first one they released, so only the restoration part. Without the Necromancer campaigns. Oh, it's the complete edition. I see. Okay, so they did add some things to it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I heard about that pirate faction and they told me it was pretty unbalanced. Oh, it's a mod, it's not the release, the official release that they made. Right. I get you. Sure is, yeah, because the sprites of the game are beautiful, and being able to see them in higher definition. Although I doubt that they have since it's a mod, I doubt that they have re-rendered the images themselves. They just allowed support for widescreen and higher resolutions. So probably what it leads to is just smaller smaller things all around. Yeah, yeah, that's what I thought. Definitely, yeah. Always when you're able to run an old classic and a new system and a newer system, it's always good. Haven't played it in very, very long time. I've been sort of getting my turn-based fix from Blood Bowl lately, and before that from the XCOM series, the new ones. They have been supplying me with my need for turn-based action, so I haven't uh, come back to Heroes. And now there is a sequel on being developed. Of course, yeah, having excuses not to paint and just play a game is something that happens way too often. Every time I've tried to manage it and have a split, so during a free evening I would decide that I would split my time and play for a couple of hours or and then paint for a couple of hours, but it's always just either one or the other. I never manage to. Yeah, yeah, I feel you. Truth of the matter is, if you play a game that is story driven and that has a decent story, you usually get caught up with it, and splitting your time between it and another leisure activity becomes a bit more difficult. So what I usually do is try to keep the games that I can beat in a couple of weeks, so I can give myself a bit of a refreshment, just revitalize my burnout from painting and then go back to the painting itself. Unfortunately, lately there haven't been too many games that can be beaten in a couple of weeks without spending way too much time. Did you have the chance to check out the new logo I made? Well, I collaged together from ready for the, you mean for the flesh or overall for the primer? Oh, good. The flesh is the Bugman's Glow. It looks darker because I'm putting it on a white primer, and so it contrasts more with the white, giving uh, giving the feel that it's darker, but it's not. Yeah, the logo is now gray in theme. I cobbled it up from some free assets that I found on the internet. I also put credits for the websites and the artists that made them. So if you want to go over to where I got them from, you can. Oh, be careful what you're going to say because... Oh, okay. All right. Thanks for the link. You never know who's listening. Yeah, honestly, I haven't found much need for the Forge World stuff. They have some good things here and there, but I haven't found anything that I... Yeah, but making them is a different topic. Still though, thanks, I appreciate it. Oh yeah, see that would be convenient. Although in terms of parts, I think the new Wood Elf theme, it's fine. I wasn't blown away by it, but it's pretty fine. I don't know how I feel about the leotards, but then checking back the previous editions, I noticed that they also have the same type of leotard, just a lot less detailed, so I suppose that this is in fact the original theme that GW is going for in terms of their wood elves. Which is fine. There's just something about that team that I can't quite put my finger on it. I just don't like the wood elves. At some points I do, at some points I don't. In terms of elf teams, I prefer the pro elves. I really like the pro elves with the mohawks and the punky vibe considerably more than I like the woodies. And yeah, you like all of them. I like most of them, with just a few more notable exceptions. Just thematically. I don't like the lizards. And I think that's it actually. I don't like the lizards, and I'm iffy on the high elves. Although Grebo made a very compelling argument with their Kickstarter. They looked amazing, but again, not a very argumented feeling about them. I just don't like them. It's just preference, I guess. Like in terms of a team, not in terms of models. Oh, you like the high elves? Nurgle, yeah, Nurgle depends on the models. Yeah. Sometimes you see some way too disgusting. Yeah, I understand. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Some of the models have way too graphic decomposition and rot, and it actually does become a bit uneasy on the eye. Nurgle is Elgren backwards. Good to know. Good to know. Yeah, still not that much to talk about the process. Just layering paint, over paint, over paint. Trying not to leave too many brush strokes. Get a nice, even, smooth coverage, and that's pretty much it for the base coats. If I don't know if you were online when I was complaining about the fact that my airbrush died. Well, I use shades, yeah, but I won't be shading the entire surface. So for the flesh, I will go directly to highlights. Probably 2 or 3 layers of the highlights, and then I will blend them down with the shades in the recesses, going out just a tiniest bit over the recesses to smooth out the entire thing. Yeah, it will be glazing, and since they are pretty transparent paints on their own, they actually lend themselves pretty well to the process. Oops, sorry. And when you're using matte finishes or satin finishes for the paints, such as, yeah, it's pretty stormy, so I do expect some loss in either power or frames at some point, because the network providers love to play it safe and sometimes disconnect their hubs and switches to protect from lightning bolts. Oh, okay. You stream on the TV. Are you streaming from your phone or the PC? From the laptop. Okay. Yeah, setting up the stream and the extra monitor actually gave me a chance to correct an error. Yeah, indeed. That's definitely the case. Although in this particular stream and probably the next one, because of the white, it's going to be a bit foggy. I'm sorry about that. I just didn't expect this reaction. And if I reduce the exposure, the image starts flickering. So it's either a fuzzy image or a flickering image. Essentially, I just can't get it right. Yeah, the focus is decent, but it's just that the reflection from the light. Maybe I will need to put another layer of diffusion. Prime it in black, yeah. Fortunately, that happens to be the one color of primer I don't have. So as I was saying, when I was setting up the extra monitor, I noticed that for years and years I've been connecting my TV with an HDMI cable that went into the motherboard of the PC. So it was using the Intel graphics instead of the actual video card. I was wondering why it was giving me issues every now and again. Yeah. And it's been years that I've been using it like that. I felt really stupid. Yeah, I don't trust wireless technology that much. I just can't, especially if I expect a stable performance. I just can't put my eggs in the basket of wireless technology. I just can't. It has to have a cable that I know where it goes in, where it goes out, how I can restart it, get some adequate monitoring so I can troubleshoot it if necessary, but that might just be from my previous work experience. Things have changed since then, so probably start having more trust in such technologies. Okay, so I think that's decent. I have just a couple of little things to finish up and I can move on to the next mini. Also, another stupid thing that I did when I was building these models was what I used. Absolutely, block painting for the win. I was actually talking about that I usually section pieces out to paint, and when one is drying I move on to the next one, and in that way I don't miss anything and I don't waste too much time when applying paint. So yeah, when I tried to gap fill these guys, I was wondering whether to use a liquid solution or to play around with milliput or green stuff. and then I saw that the milliput is actually water soluble. So what I did was take a small piece of the milliput, put it in a plastic cup, and with water, and then just mash it until I get something with the viscosity that can fill gaps. And it took about half an hour up to 40 minutes of just mashing and mashing and mashing with the plastic, with a sculpting tool to get that consistency. You think it's a good idea, yeah, but after I did this, I realized that's actually it, yeah. That I had gotten the Vallejo equivalent of the liquid green stuff. I had it all along, it was in arm's reach, but I had covered it up and I had forgotten that I have it. So yeah, I essentially gave myself considerable arthritic pains from the mashing of the milliput in water, and instead I could have just used a drop of the liquid gap filler. But yeah, in case that you run out of any of these solutions, that works. It's painful, it's gruesome, but it works. And then you just apply the slushy that you made with a brush. And then of course you have to file it down and play around to make it. But the effect was good. So actually here, right on the tricep, he was the connection piece. Here under the shoulder plate there was a connection piece, and they've gone down pretty smoothly, so I'm pretty happy with the result. Silicone brushes, for what purpose? For applying the liquid green stuff. Yeah, okay. Ah, oh yeah, I see. I got what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, I can't quite describe it, but they're tools for working clay and such things. Like soft pencils. Flat pen. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I don't even need to open that up. I know exactly what you mean. I should get me some things. I use these old dentist tools that I got from a pharmacy. Oh, really? Yeah, it might be a good idea to get me some then. Yeah, I'll think about that. That would be good. Especially for putty work. Yeah, definitely. I've been watching them put to use on the Miniac channel. I don't know if you're following him. He's a great guy. He does YouTube videos, not so much streaming, but short YouTube videos. And when he is doing any gap fills or any conversions, he usually uses these tips. And they look quite comfortable and quite applicable. Yeah, he's pretty cool. He inspired me to try feathering as a technique, but I can't quite get the courage, since you need to put down a thicker load of paint in order to feather it out, and it just goes against my religion, against all of the habits that I've built so far. I love painting with almost watercolor consistency, and the idea of just slapping down paint and then feathering it out with a wet brush. I fear it's gonna get gloppy, that I won't be able to feather it out on time, and so on. But the results are pretty good, so I might try them out. I just need to get a mini with a larger flat surface, and I can give it a shot. Either that or the two brush blending. It also seems not too complicated to apply. Because it's been a decent amount of time, I think I should start trying the different wet blending techniques. To overcome my fear. Sure, no problem. I was just saying that I have been inspired to try some wet blending techniques, either, well, feathering or two brush blending, which is essentially the same thing, only you use two brushes for the two brush blending, and for the feathering you just use the same brush. But I'm waiting for that model that has surfaces that will lend themselves to such a technique, as in flatter surfaces that are well sectioned out, so that I don't ruin any of the detail. By the way, do you remember when I was talking about sub-assemblies and how I messed up by building the whole model together? Yeah, this was the guy. This was the guy I was referring to. So you're going to see me struggle quite a bit with this fella. Cause why think? Why put thought into it when you have super glue? Just put them all together. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah. By the way, sorry about today, about the appointment that we had. But since I'm going to take some days off of work, as usual, they decided to give me more work than usual. So I had to take my things and do a little bit of additional work at home. So I have to crunch a bit more to get things done by Thursday. I really don't understand why this always has to happen a few days before any vacation time. It's like clockwork. You can have weeks and weeks and weeks where you can fit everything in quite comfortably. And then the exact week when you're excited that you're gonna be doing something different, that you're gonna go somewhere, here they come with a brand new batch of stuff that needs to be done. Yeah. But it is what it is. We'll get through it. Not the end of the world, is just killing my vibe. In Plovdiv, I'm going to the Hills of Rock Music Fest. There are going to be some bands that I've been wanting to see live for years, like over a decade maybe, of fandom, that I can finally see them. I can finally see them live. And my girlfriend, she also has the same sentiment towards some of the bands. And so I'm preparing to have a serious blast of a time. It starts on Friday and it will go on all the way to Sunday included. So I will be traveling back on Monday. Yeah, it's a 3-day festival, open air. Should be awesome. And I am also picking her up on Wednesday. And since we don't really get to have too much time together, I'm probably not gonna be streaming from Wednesday onwards. And that's why I'm trying to get today and tomorrow to just have something for the week in terms of presents and to get these guys started. Because per my schedule, I need to get these two done in July. So if I start a bit early, I should have enough time. But yeah. Also, scheduling my last game of Blood Bowl for the Rebel season will be pretty tough, because I will probably only have Tuesday and Wednesday to play. Is the Manazons the team that is the Omni team? The one that can be used for Norse and Amazons and... Oops, sorry, the stream. You're being fairly confident, giving yourself so little time for the Underworld team. Not the Underworld, Undead team that you'll be taking. I hope that you'll be able to have enough time. Because after last year, I really don't want to push myself to crunch on painting. It really defeats the purpose of having fun when you have to get 4 models done in a day because of poor time management. Okay, yeah, oh yeah, that's true. With those awesome flesh golems. I really love the flash golems from that team, from the Necro team that you had. I could get the entire team just so I can paint those flash golems. They have a very 80s slasher. I haven't seen the mummies, I don't think. But the golems have a very 80s slasher flick feel to them. And I do really like those movies. Like Friday the 13th and the sort. Also the patchwork skin that they have lends themselves to very fun experimentation in skin tones. Okay, same style. Yeah, I think that when I get to Necro or Undead, I'll be using this theme. Was it the Willy one? I think it's Willy. Oh, they're not Willy. What are they? RN? I thought they were Willy. Yeah, if they re-release. Yeah, yours. Oh, okay. So, let's get to this guy. RN, okay. Anyway, I thought they were Willy. Might be confusing them with something else. Oh, and I was going to tell Rora Rimbo about the Rebel, how Rebel will go on after the regular seasons, because there was a post on the Reddit. On Reddit, the Reddit. What am I talking about? The Eternals, yeah, that's what they were. Yes. Right. Cool. Yeah. Well, we'll sure as hell try, yeah? Because I will keep building them on stream, and then I will be painting them on stream, and oh, come on. There's always time for one more game system. You can never have too many. Yeah, about Rebel. So what they're doing is they're applying what they usually do to one-day tournaments. So they will have the normal playoffs for the ones that that finished highly enough in the ranks, and for us, for the rest of us, they will be a Challengers Cup. And the Challengers Cup will go in the exact same way, organization-wise. So we will get to have a small championship. Unless you want to re-roll your team. You may not play in the Challengers Cup if you reroll your team. But if you do choose not to play, you have to reroll your team. Yeah, unless you want to change your team for next season, you have to be in it. They expressed that they wouldn't have any leniency. You can apply to the admins for a concede loss if you want to clear out any MNGs from your team. But apart from that, you still need to play. I haven't thought about that. I didn't see anything that stated if you want to rest for a season and keep your team. I think it would be best to write to your divisional admin just in case. But that makes sense, yeah. If you should be able to keep your team if you're not going to use it for next season and not gonna participate in the next season at all. It does make sense. Well, you should play if you want to play. At the end of the day, this is a leisure activity. I think that should be an option. It was before, so before this implementation, you could freeze your team for a season. You just didn't apply for, you just didn't enlist. Yeah. Yeah, an off season is a good idea if you've had a bit too much, if you need to recharge your Blood Bowl batteries. Are you going to skip a season 2, Emo? Or is it that you just keep on struggling? Onward and upward always. Yeah. One of these days, one of these wolves will not die. Did you manage to rebuild the mighty blow on the werewolf? Oh. And 3 niggles. Oh my, that's harsh. I'm just waiting for the game where my half-skaven catcher, runner, yeah, catcher, is going to bite the bullet, and then I'll be ever so sad. He's been lucky so far, but you never know. Oh yeah, that's a problem. And losing armor value. Oh no, 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 this is bad. Well, Roro Rimbo, I don't know if, in case you're not gonna go to bed after the game, have you considered having a coffee or a refreshing beverage of some sort? Yeah, playing Blood Bowl until you have to play Blood Bowl. That's always a good decision. An energetic way to pass the time. And I figure that my mumblings don't particularly contribute to keeping you awake. I can't quite figure out where this guy's flesh ends on the inside of his thighs. I think there's here. Oh, good to hear. Glad to hear it. Because I catch myself of being a bit too monotonous when I speak, as I'm trying to focus at the same time. Yep, Primate Black always helps. If you don't paint it, it's just shadow. It is, yeah, it is a conversation, but still. I really do enjoy hanging out like this. My only concern is that keeping you guys active in the chat might be obstructing some other things that you could be doing. So sure, yeah, of course, always. I can also nice. I can try to integrate the voice chat on the stream. So essentially we could do everything at once. We can chat, we can watch the stream, we can get some work done. Especially during streams where I just lay down the base colors. Two games of Age of Empires, that sounds good. Are you playing for full development, or do you restrict the game rules for a certain time period? Because I remember that when I played the original Age of Empires, I always went full, yeah. And it took forever. Oh, you play with a colleague. That's great. Cooperatively or competitively? In office break. Okay. Co-op. I don't know how what's the level of the AI in Age of Empires, but I can imagine that it poses some challenges. Since the AI is always able to both micro and macro manage at the same time, whereas as fast as you can be, you still have to switch over from one activity to the other. Annoying, yeah, okay. Coming in, disrupting your development, stopping you, having to, and talking on the phone. Yeah, that would help, I imagine. Oh, it's that kind of AI. And it takes full advantage of micromanagement. I've always been very bad at real-time strategy, so I can completely relate. Which is a pity because I do enjoy them. But it's the type of game that you can't enjoy while playing because you have to be 5 places at once. Can't just stand around admiring the scenery. And the way your little dudes are building or fighting, you have to always issue commands and More time than not even be at the same place where the action is taking place. Yeah, our 3-hour game tournaments. That will improve and we'll get more used to it with time, I am sure about it. That being said, this time I am most definitely getting some headache pills beforehand. Just for whatever reason, I always get a headache during these tournaments. I constantly overthink. Well, yeah, but I don't know. It does create some additional pressure. Yeah, just to keep us up. We can try it out, just as a reference point. Yeah. By the way, that's how essentially with chess clocks is how they played full games on War Machine tournaments. That was the first tabletop game that I saw making use of chess clocks. But yeah. Also, another thing that I found to help, at least in terms of building up stress throughout the games, is not to think while your opponent is playing. Simply because if you need to think of a strategy to counter after every move he makes, that will make you go bananas. So just sit back, enjoy, take a breather while he's playing, and when you come back, just assess the situation after your turn has started. Doesn't help with the time, but it helps with your overall energy being spent and your mental sanity. I've been employing this on the video game version, and it has been helping me quite a bit.
And now it's just like, man, you gotta have that time where you just like disconnect from the scene, just the race, like, and it's a race that I've created in my head, you know. But you have to step away from it.
I really over-thinned that paint. Oh well. Just more layers for the layer god then. Yeah, but mostly because of the calculations, but I'm referring to the actual mental process of your strategy, of your tactical insight. Not thinking about your turn during your opponent's turn. Oh really, you can't concentrate on online version? Maybe if you're more used to playing chess and things like that, it comes more naturally to you to play on tabletop. Yeah, I've done that. I've done that. I am guilty of this as well. Which is why I started panning the camera out. Using the default camera really leads to cases like this. I agree. I did leave out a thrower or a lineman that just got behind, couldn't keep up, and I just forgot about him. And all of a sudden, I wonder why am I undernumbered? And then it's, oh yeah, he's over there talking to the cheerleaders again. Yes, well, when you get to that point where you have to search for players that aren't there, that's not good. Which is weird for you, considering that you're orcs, so they should pretty much stay on the pitch for the most part. By the way, next game I'm playing against High Elves. I I really haven't had much experience playing against high elves. So it's probably gonna be fun watching them run circles around me. And they can also be somewhat bashy. So I'll have to look out for my catcher until I figure out how to use him. Trying to leave the claws on his hand unpainted so that I don't forget that I have to put another color. There is no guarantee, is there? This guy has also been treated with the Milliput slushy, and I'm also fairly content with how it came out. That being said, I did also use sanding paper. That's about 6,000 grit. So you can buff metal with that insanely thin grit of a sandpaper. So it would have been weird if it left any unsmooth edges. I don't, you're probably not noticing, but whenever I take paint out of the pot, I always do so with a brush that is heavily loaded with water. So what that does is that the water helps create a bit of separation between the brush and the paint, making it easier to put the paint on the palette from the brush without having to wash off half the paint. And it gives me a fairly ready consistency to start painting right away. So I don't need to take paint, put it on the palette, wash my brush, essentially have the paint I picked up, and then go back with water to dilute it and then start painting. So it's a bit, I'm saving a bit more material that way, a bit more paint, and it saves me a bit more time between taking the paint out and starting to paint. This, of course, being only applicable when you are using pots for paints instead of dropper bottles. If you use dropper bottles, then you don't have that issue at all. You don't need to think about things like that, but Citadel refused to go into dropper bottles, so This is how we do. And as I have previously said, using a larger brush gives you considerably more time to work between individual refills, so to say. I'm getting a bit sloppier as time goes by, since I actually want to get the flesh done today. And so I am dirtying up some other elements, some other details of the model. And in some cases, that's not really a problem. In some cases, it might create some issues further along the line, such as right here on the chest fur. Because of the fin detail of the furs in this segment, having covered some of the fur with skin tone will make it harder for me to see where the strands of fur end, and I might miss them when I come back with the fur color. Which is why I generally try to paint neat and tidy throughout the whole process. Also, it's a sort of an exercise to build up the habit for when you start painting details. I am getting more used to painting from this position, but stiffness does incur every now and again. I'll get the hang of it sooner or later. I think I'm also mostly managing to stay in frame and in focus, which is not taking any additional focus out of me. Which is good. Little by little, overcoming the challenges of stream painting. Also, I really do like how the base paints cover the white primer. At first I was a bit iffy, but now I've either gotten used to it or I'm just starting to see the benefits. Though I will definitely figure out a way to put additional diffusion on the light. Not just for painting and not just for the white primer, but in general. There are some unnecessarily harsh reflections, which could be easily solved if the camera didn't have to be attached to the light, since it's a webcam and it doesn't have a very large zoom range, so it has to be kept near the mini, and I tried to keep it in front of me on a tripod, but that was just torture. I need to have this space in front of me. So at some point I might get a separate arm to mount the camera on, and potentially a mic. One that doesn't make me sound like I'm in a garage. Although this one is pretty decent for what it is. Initially, I played around with the mic on the face cam. And yeah, compared to that one, this here is high quality stuff. By the way, I have now made a Instagram account as well. So if you are active on Instagram, feel free to follow me there. I'm trying to get the grips with all of the hashtags I need to include in order to give any type of exposure to my models, to my posts. Yeah, I usually use it just to follow other painters and similar. However, the hashtags do give a very nice way to provide exposure to your posts, to categorize them, and if you follow, I did not know that prior, being an old person who doesn't use that much social media, but you can follow hashtags. So you can actually follow hashtag miniature painting or hashtag tabletop or hashtag Blood Bowl, and everyone that posts with hashtags that are that include these, you will get them on your feed. So in that way you can actually discover many new artists, and well, depending on what interest you have followed, you can actually discover much easier than you would in, let's say, Facebook. And as you can see, the post I made for today's stream includes some tags. This is because I simultaneously posted on both medias. Also, in that way I can customize these posts a little bit more, so it won't be just the link to Twitch. I can include a picture of what I'm gonna be working on, so it would be either more enticing or more revolting, depending on personal preference, of course. I hope that would help. And possibly bring other people along. Because you know what they say, the more the merrier. I should really start playing around with different mixes or the base flesh, because I've been doing the exact same formula essentially forever. Well, since I started painting, that is. And I have been thinking about introducing other nuances in the Bugman's Glow, so I would still use it as a foundation but introduce other tints. I've been thinking about trying some grays, for instance, for painting dark elf skin, or browns, maybe even greens. Get some more variety because I am getting a bit tired of doing the exact same skin pattern over and over and over again. The problem with this is that, for instance, in this case, I will paint the 12 Norsemen and ladies, and then I will go to a different project. And as I come back to this one, the time that I have spent on the other project would have given me other insights on some techniques, on some experimentation, and I would like to apply that. However, if I do so, I would break up the consistency, the uniformity of what I have painted before. So essentially going back to a project that you have not finished entirely will force you to degrade your skills and abilities that you have developed. Or it forces you to go back and make touch-ups to each and every one of the models that you have already painted for that old project. So either way, you're creating issues for yourself if you don't finish something outright and you go back and forward between your projects. Though I don't think I would have the strength to pull through 6 more of these guys. Well, no, how? 4. So if I do these guys, that'll be 10, and 2 more for 12 to finish up the build of the team, and then I would have 4 more. Oh, I cannot imagine painting 10 projects simultaneously. I would go bonkers. Oh really? So we have some lurkers here and there. That's awesome. If anyone feels the courage to come up, please do so. Say hello. We are a welcoming bunch, as you can see. Just rambling about general stuff, so... yeah, well, fingers crossed. Oh yeah, come along, say hi. So yeah, I think that this will do it for now. I managed to... Hi! Hello. It's Anif. Always the wise guy. Cracking the jokes. So all in all, for 2.5 hours, all I managed to do was paint one color on 2 minis. And now you know why it takes me 2 weeks to paint a model. Yay. I know. I think it went on sufficiently smooth. Unfortunately, you can't really see because of the glare from the white, but you can take my word for it. So I think that I will leave it here for the painting portion for today. And tomorrow I think I'll continue with the Necromunda project. Emphasizing on just building the bodies, cleaning them up. Then I will accessorize them. And by the way, Itzanev, do you know approximately how many of the Goliaths I will need for a gang? Or if I will need to build all of them? Because there are about 10, I think, 9 or 10 on both pros. So should I be aiming to have all of them built? Six or seven. Alright, so I won't have to build all of them at once. Well, they should be less, I think. Because they're tougher as individual units. At least they seem like it. Yeah, exactly. So I probably wouldn't be able to field too many. Especially if I give them more expensive loadouts. Goliath is easy mode, but it depends on mission and playstyle. Probably. I picked them up simply because rule of cool. As I've mentioned before, I don't really know any of the rules. They just they looked pleasing for me. I seem to like the bulkier versions of themes, which is why for War Machine I picked up Kador, and they had the same. They said the same about Kador, so for War Machine, that they are easier because they are high defense and not as maneuverable. But that doesn't mean I've had only victories, quite the contrary. Augie from our group gave me a right thrashing. Can't really fight what I find appealing. Definitely, definitely he is. I've only played two types of games with him, one being War Machine and the other being Blood Bowl, but he's also, he's always very aware of the rules. He always has a functional strategy and also very open to the questions, rules-wise, tactics-wise. I really enjoy playing with him. By the way, could you please check if the title of the stream updated? Because I noticed that I forgot to change it at the start of the stream. Yeah, so it updated, good. Thanks. Right, so I think that'll be it for today. Cheers to all for joining. Thank you very much for being my viewers and for being so active in the chat, in the conversation. And hopefully I'll see you again tomorrow for the building of the Goliaths. And have a lovely evening. Have a wonderful day tomorrow. And that is me, Bachacolio, signing out. Bye bye.